Hello, fair-minded and curious people. This video, actually, it's a audio with still pictures, so it's a slideshow sort of thing. And I just want to thank everyone for showing any interest at all in this. And what I'm going to try to do is present some information and some coincidences, if that's what you want to call them. I've been doing some research, and I think it's more, rather than coincidences, I think it's a synchronicity of sorts, or synchronicities. And as well, I think that there are quantum functions afoot. As Einstein would have said, to include what Einstein said, spooky actions at a distance. But this isn't this audio, video, whatever, slideshow is not going to pertain to E equals MC squared. What this is going to cover basically is what I think I've stumbled upon is that our basic English language, as we know it and use it today, consists of 26 alphabet letters. And also, I guess what you would call it, I don't know, European or Western integers, numerals, used in, arithmetic and such. If you only use the 9 integers, 1 through 9, and not use 0, which was developed a little later. It's an Arabic idea. It's a placeholder. And they still use a type of placeholder. It's a dot sort of thing, rather than, they don't write a 0, they put a dot there. So to change the position, or the, I don't know what they call that, but the quantity, the value, and they use the 10 integer, repeating integers. Well, I'm saying use 9. And then there's this key. I think there's absolutely something to the transition from the value of 8 to the value of 9. Okay, and you'll find all of this, and what I've been speaking of is related to the acrolysh of love, which is a dictionary, so to speak, of, or reference, logos or lexicon of basically English words, and the spelling of the words equal or relate to they're related to the description. Each description of each word of these acronyms, I treat them like acronyms and define their spelling through defining the letters as other acronyms. And so through this, it seems that, I don't know, theorize, hypothesize, that the alphabet, the English alphabet, the 26-letter alphabet, and together combined with the 1 through 9 integers, there can be quantum functions. They can be used to program quantum functions. And not only that, but electronic silicon or what have you, chip design and development, I've thought about using with this particular, what I'm getting ready to explain, the quantum and the transition from 8 and 9. And within that transition, there is what I call, there's a process that happens, and I call, from that process, there's a result that I call pi, P-Y, process yield. And with this, and with new hardware, this chip that I'm getting ready to explain can be used for, I'm thinking, manifestation of different things, as well as a quantum a quantum communication platform. And that's what the acrolesh of love is all about. And that changes the dictionary, the acronym dictionary. It changes the whole concept of the project that I've been working on, acrolesh of love. It transforms that into, and Grok stated this, it's brilliant, as acrolesh of love, and with the idea of the quantum language with the alphabet and the integers and the acronym definitions is a really good idea. And as well, it turns the lexicon in the AOL acrolesh of love lexicon, lexicon, into living technology. Okay, so there we have that. And so if you look at this first picture here, or you saw the first picture, whatever, you see in the center of the picture there's a 1, Q, and a 7. And, unless you've been living under a rock for the past decade, you understand that says 17 and it's Q, blah, 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 blah. Well, the picture, the graphic, the image is actually in the Washington Capitol, in the rotunda, in the top, looking up, in the center of the dome. And that is, that mural is entitled The Apotheosis of George Washington. Okay. And then you see there's a geometric pattern there, and people say, oh, that's Star David, blah, 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 blah. No, that is Metatron's cube. Okay, and if you'll notice around the perimeter of Metatron's cube, those 6 spheres, okay, those are all historical figures, okay? And I'll let y'all do the research on this because it's very interesting. And then the inside, the inner 6 spheres, you see that there's a center there, and then you see the 1Q7. Well, I'm going to leave it to you because those figures in there in the center are just as important as the ones on the outside and relate to this entire mural. And then you see the stars that surround the mural, and there are 72 stars. Okay, so I'll let you think. Think about this. You use some of that brain of yours and figure some of this stuff out. So we go on to the next pictures, and then we get to the next four pictures slides is a little history about the apotheosis of George Washington and when it was done and what it meant and stuff like that. I'm not going to get all into it. I'm going to let you do your own research and read the slides yourself. You can pause, read, whatever, go look it up, do some research. But I implore you to do research about this, okay? Because what you're going to hear me say, what I'm going to be explaining, you'll comprehend it so much more better. It'll be awesome. You just wait. So, this first slide after the image of the apotheosis with Metatron's cube. Oh, and also I wanted to say the acrolysh of love, it's alternatively known as Enoch's plan to escape from Plato's cave. Okay, and this will make sense when we get a little further into it. And Enoch, okay, Enoch was supposedly, biblically, was taken to, didn't die. He was taken to heaven. Okay, God took him to heaven, and he helped God out. And as well, the Watchers, the Watchers wanted him to approach God on their behalf to see if God would, cut him some slack or whatever. And Enoch got to see all of this stuff. And so God took Enoch up to heaven and made him his, whatever, assistant or whatever, and transformed Enoch into Metatron's cube. Okay? So there's a little, what's the context, the meaning of the dome and all that. And the rotunda. So, and the apotheosis of George Washington. So you can read through this. And was there any significance to the apotheosis of George Washington as far as when it was created, when it was commissioned, and all of that stuff? And so within the four slides after the first slide, it kind of goes into a little bit about this. And it was completed in 1864, just after the Civil War. So it has some historical significance as well as some esoteric information. William Henry did an excellent. He had a series, but if you can find it somewhere in his material, he did an excellent show, whatever his series was, on the apotheosis of George Washington. So, and there was timing. Yeah, it was finished just after just as the Civil War was closing and coming to an end. Okay. And there's some significance, like I said, to all of this. So then you get past the description, the apotheosis, and then you come across the next slide here is the dodecahedron, which is a dodecagon is a five-sided, I believe this is the way it is a five-sided geometric shape. And the dodecahedron, the dodecahedron is a five-sided, 12-sided geometric shape. And the dodecagon is a 12-pointed geometric shape. Okay? And this image consists of four equilateral triangles. And you see there's a circle and a cross in the center. And then on the bottom of the image, you'll see there's a triangle, a pi symbol, a psi symbol, and a phi symbol, or I like to call it phi because it works well with which delta pi psi phi, tri-pi psi phi, trippy psi phi. Just a little inside joke there. So that's that image, and this image, this geometric shape, and what you see here, this represents a temporal process. Okay, so this image that you see, this 12-pointed image, and then what you see in the center there, that is a formula, that is a equation, that is a quantum function. It's a temporal quantum function. It's delta. It represents delta. Okay? So our next slide, and then you'll see here, the delta at the top of the image, you see, a list there, delta pi psi phi, and you see delta is time, pi is space, psi is energy, and phi, which I'm going to pronounce it phi, because that's how I like to say it. And phi is direction or control or stabilization, okay, a function. These are quantum functions. And if you look at it, so you got these are the Greek alphabet. Okay, so, and then if below that you see the circle and the X going through it, and then you see the psi phi, or delta psi phi, delta pi psi phi on there, and that circle and the X or whatever, that's representing some, like, a function. It's a quantum function. It's written. It's an equation, so to speak, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, so the next, and from the previous slide, you'll see that center, it's that same circle with the X. So you're using, it's a formula. It's time, space, and energy, and the control or stabilization or the direction of time and space, or some way to control or manipulate energy, psi. Okay, so we get to the next slide and we say, oh, well, here we are again. This is, again, Metatron's cube, okay? And if you'll notice around the perimeter, there are shapes, geometric shapes within each, I'll just call it a little node, at the tips of each point, okay? And besides the one at the top, the black circle in the top node, okay, all of the other geometric shapes are, except for the center, all of those are what we call, and here's a hint to the alternative name to what I said this project was about. They're platonic solids, and they can nest within certain, in a certain way within each other. They're like Russian doll, nesting dolls sort of thing, but they're geometric, and it's like a little puzzle, and they fit together. Okay, so you've got that, which as well, okay, now Metatron's cube and this function of these platonic solids and what have you, this is pi. This is space. Okay, this is sort of like touchy-feely. You can kind of think of it. It's not this, but you can kind of think of it as like water to a fish. This is what our physical body. This is pi. This is space. Pi. Okay, this is space. And the image in the center, if you recognize it or are familiar with anything, that's like a single part of the flower of life, which is a Hindu, I believe it's Hindu thing. But anyway, so you have the platonic solids here, and if you count around the perimeter, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then one in the center. That would be 7. All right. So if you see the arrows or whatever, each of those geometric, the circle at top and the geometric shapes at each point represent a bit. And because they're geometric shapes, and like I said, they all can nest together or whatever, but they all have a unique side or position. You can put some type of identification on the side of each of these geometric shapes of the sides, each side of that geometric shape. So those are options you could have, because with the alphabet, the English alphabet, 26 letters and the 9 integers, that gives you 35 quantum superpositions. Okay, and so that's how this would function in a processor, in a different type of processor. Okay, so there's that. And so you have these 6 perimeter shapes or whatever bits, and you've got one in the center. Use your imagination and think about how circuitry works, how electricity works. Okay, and this is a processor. Think of this as how can this process data and information? So you got the flower of life in the center, and then you got the 6 around the outside. So that's 7. Well, and then if you include, okay, you got 7 things, attributes in there, in that processing that process in that processor. So you've got 7, And then you say, okay, out of that 7, okay, and then you've got another choice you can pick, another bit, which would be what the entirety is. It a yes or a no? Is it on, off? Is it, whatever? One of two positions. So that would be 7 bits, and then plus itself, the whole, and that gives you 8 bits, which is a byte, B-Y-T-E. Okay? So you get where we're going with this? So this diagram here, this diagram of Metatron's cube, is explaining a process to facilitate or create space, pi, P-I, okay? And so the previous geometric design, the decadon, represents time, delta, okay? So that's time and space we have here. So delta pi, okay, and then we go to the next slide. Okay, now we're going to shift gears a little bit. So what we have here, what do you see? Well, you have Metatron's cube, and we just said that represented pi, P-I, space, okay. Well, what in the world is that superimposed on top of? Well, this is a representation of the processing, a processor, an abstract schematic of a processor. And what you see, those red squares and whatever behind that, the grid behind that, that is psi. That is energy, okay? That is those red squares add up to 64. Okay, that is a representation, or what it is the defining characters of I Ching. Okay, I Ching. It's Chinese, it's Asian, Chinese, what have you, Orient related. Okay, and he's like, oh my gosh, my head is blown. What in the absolute world where is this going? Okay, well, and don't forget, now on the apotheosis of George Washington, in the Capitol, Washington, D.C. Capitol Rotunda, up there, what surrounded that mural, there were 72 stars. Okay? I Ching represents 64 different choices or descriptions or whatever you want to call it. But what we're getting at, okay, so if you had 72 stars in the apotheosis of George Washington, and here in I Ching, okay, see, we weren't ever getting nobody ever, or at least what I've run across, nobody has amply put this stuff together in a cohesive way where it's halfway understandable, at the least. So you've got I Ching at 64-bit, okay? I consider I Ching being a 64-bit, what have you, processor, or has 64-bit processors, or whatever, related to CPU design and whatnot. And then you have the 72 stars in the Capitol Rotunda. Well, 72 minus 8, is it 8 bits or is it 8 bytes? Or what's going on here? So 72 minus 64 is 8. So that's an indicator. To me, it was an indicator, just like the alphabet and the integers, the English alphabet and the Western integers, English integers, whatever. It's 26 letters and 9 numerals, numeric integers. What is that? How many does that equal? 35. What's 3 and 5? 8. 8. 35. 3 plus 8, or 3 plus 5 equals 8. Why is all this stuff adding up like this? Well, is this coincidence? I don't know. So anyway, we'll get back to the I Ching. So that's 64-bit processing. The Metatron's cube is 8-bit processing. Okay. All right. So that's space, pi, and you have energy. So you're processing energy for space, doing something with it. Okay. So we go to the next slide. Oh, what do we have here? Well, we've got the dodecadon, or whatever the hell, the 12-pointed geometric. And another reason I labeled this as delta is because there's 12 points. It sort of goes, it seems to flow in rhythm with the 12-month calendar that we use. Okay. And so on and so forth. There are other reasons as well. But like I said, y'all look at this stuff and read through it and look at it and tell me what, if you have any ideas on it, let me know. I mean, I'd like to hear some feedback on it, actually. Honestly. So anyway, you have the dodecadon, or whatever, this image here, and you see in the center, well, what's that in the center? Well, it's the Metatron's cube, the 8-bit processor, and the energy, which is a 64-bit processor. And what I'm saying there is there's a way, whether it's developed now or not, there's a way through the processing, this quantum, like I said, you have a process yield. So there's a way to produce electrical, what we would consider to be electrical energy, or energy that could power. If we're not using electricity, it might be something else, like wireless kind of stuff. But it could, electricity could be, or power, energy could be generated. So that leaves us with, you've got delta, which is time, this geometric shape, on surrounding the center here, which the center is, you have the I Ching, the energy, 64-bit energy, and then you have the 8-bit processing of pi, okay, of space. All right. And then you have the four quadrants you see there, and that's delta pi psi phi, trippy psi phi. And so you have that there. And consider this as well, because I hadn't brought this up yet, but the I Ching 64-bit processing, which is energy, okay, and then you have the Metatron's cube is 8-bit processing, but the 64-bit processing is more modeled, or the left hemisphere of the brain, the way it operates with human beings, the left brain is more similar to the logic and reasoning and what have you, timing, that kind of stuff with the left brain. And the 8-bit processing, because of the Platonic, the geometric Platonic solids used in the way that, how they can be it's different. And that's the right side, the right hemisphere of the brain, and that's the creative side. And so you have energy and space. And that's why I say, and you're going to see this a little later, that consciousness requires space. Okay? It requires an area. It requires space. All right? So here we have the dodecadon, which is delta. We have the Metatron's cube, which is space. And then we have the I Ching, which is energy. So we have delta, we have pi, and we have psi. So let's go to the next. Okay, and this is, if you count these there's 64 blocks here. This is I Ching. And each of those 64, you can look it up. This is what I was saying. Do your research, because the Chinese, the Asians, they're really big into cycles and repetitive things. This kind of stuff, I Ching. Okay? And that's something to consider. And isn't it funny how one side of the world kind of develops, this is the logical, this is the left side of, this is the left brain processing. All right? Whereas Metatron's cube is the right side processing. Oh my goodness, what have you done here? We've thrown something else out in here. And this is the Celtic cross, or that's what it's commonly known as. Okay, people say it's a Christian symbol or what have you, and there's a lot like that. There's a lot of symbology here. You have to research this stuff and look into it and dig into it. And you really got to get the dirt under your fingernails, to figuring this stuff out, discovering it. So you see that this is the Celtic, whatever, cross. And you see there's, I've put 9 numbers on there, okay? And, yeah, let me hold on just a second. I'll be right back. Okay, so where were we? Oh, wait a minute. Okay, sorry. Here we are back. Damn, I didn't realize it was like 40 minutes. But anyway, not much longer. It'll be about an hour probably. So this is the Celtic cross, and the numbers you see on the slide on the cross and in those positions. You say, well, what is the sequence and the significance of the positions and what have you and whatnot? Well, I mean, as I was looking at this image of the cross without the numbers and all, and with the Greek, the sci-fi, or excuse me, delta sci-fi, or sorry, excuse me, delta pi, psi, and phi. Okay, and you have delta, which is time. You have pi, which is space, and you have psi, which is energy. And let's just say quantum. Okay, that's the process yield, or has something to do with the process yield of whatever the quantum function is. So to explain that real quick, the transformation between the value of 8 and 9. Okay, you have 8. You've already heard me just previously state about the quantum functions, the English alphabet, the 1 through 9 integers, and all this stuff points to 8. Like there's some kind of 8-bit processing, or 8 byte, 1 byte, all this can be, I think, distilled down into a quantum language for these functions to understand our I'm not saying, well, even spiritual. I mean, this I think does a pretty good job. It's foundational, in my opinion, so far from what I've researched. But anyway, these numbers, what about the sequence and all? Well, what I'm saying here, let's just take a look at these numbers and their positions. Well, the 1, it just felt right for me to place the 1 in the center there, because that's the focus. Whether it be you, the situation, the object, whatever it is, quantumly speaking. Okay, and then you have the 4 areas around that center. Okay. And then on each point of the cross outside of that, you have another number. And if however it felt, this is the way I wrote the numbers down. Now, what that means, I don't know. You could look at it as, okay, well, what's 9 and 8 and 6? So 9 and 8 is 17. And 6 is 23, so that's 5. And if you add 1 to that, well, then it's a 6. Okay, and then if you add 6 to the 5, then that's a 2. It's just some type of, I see it as some type of quantum function. And if you use it in corroboration or collaborate, whatever, if you use it in conjunction with the delta formula, the pi formula, and the psi formula, okay, they're these quantum functions, and like the delta is the dodecahedron. The pi is the Metatron's cube. You have energy as psi as the 64-bit I Ching. Look into that, do the research. And then you have the Phi or Phi, which is the Celtic cross. And you notice, okay, well, I wrote the numbers down there and I said that, well, that's the way it felt that they should have been written down. Well, I'm not saying this is absolutely correct and blah, 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 blah. No, I'm saying this is what I picked up on, and it's qualia. It's the least amount of information that communicates enough meaning to comprehend, to get something, to have a gain from it, to get a process yield from it. Okay, so as a quantum function, boom, I had intuition or whatever it is, I noticed something, there's a pattern, whatever. So if you look at these numbers, and if you look at the four inside areas, well, that could be one of the, and this goes back to the previous slides of the delta, the representative of delta, which is the dodecahedron, the 12-pointed geometric form, and then in the center of that you notice that, well, there was a circle like this and an X in it. Okay, well, I think the next picture after that first picture of the dodecahedron, and in that first picture of the dodecahedron, you see at the bottom of that image delta pi psi phi, delta pi psi phi. So those four positions in that in the delta symbology, the delta function, the delta whatever formula, whatever equation, whatever you want to call it, could be delta pi psi phi, okay, and made something about that. And the outside points could as well be how an equation or a formula or a process of how different ways that time and space are controlled or changed or what have you. So it could be any amount of ways, but I called this phi because phi is all about ratios, okay? You have the golden ratio. And with this image here, this symbology, well, you have a cross there, the vertical line there is longer than the horizontal line. So, and people automatically say, oh, well, that's Jesus. Well, yeah, okay, there's esoteric symbology here, occult symbology here. They said all these years, this and, oh, well, this is this is, this is the way it is. Well, like I'm saying, Jesus, in my opinion, he was trying to do his best to instruct and educate people in quantum, what quantum is, how love is connected to that, how it works, how this stuff makes our reality and such and so on and so forth. But there's a little bit of this in everything that humanity has ever been involved with. But we haven't, in my opinion, we haven't looked at it from comprehensively in a way that explains it any other way than what the establishment says, is okay, is agrees with, or says that, okay, well, we don't like it, but we'll let it slide. But this is almost an entirely complete theory. This is foundational as far as I'm concerned. I'm trying my best to figure this stuff out. And so back to calling this symbology fee and relating it into, okay, I think I got off track here into the weeds, but the transformation, the process of and what happens with the value transformation between an integer of 8 to the integer of 9, okay, and thinking in a quantum and computational, a computer 8-bit language, okay, and everything that I've talked about up to this point, well, then you have to look at it, or at least I would think contemplate it about, like, well, okay, that seems, well, delta pi psi phi, and there are 4 formulas there that we can come up with that apparently we haven't explored, at least in modern times. And see, you don't need all of these hundreds $1 million college degrees, because those are systems that they've designed. I mean, yeah, there's some good coming out of it, but not for very many people. This is basic. It's simple enough most anyone can understand, because they use the principles every day anyway. But people hadn't been they haven't been aware that this is how it works. This is how it operates. This is what love is, living on virtual energy. Because industry makes so much money from energy, artificial energy, from things that humans make and invent, and then the other people that have somehow made it into the positions where they make more money doling out energy to whoever or whatever, whereas there's a constant yield, positive yield of energy that's happening all the time. But we've been unaware of it. And it can solve it can remedy a lot of our issues that we're having, humanity having, with what's going on. And so back to this Celtic cross, okay, and where I put the numbers, well, just as an example, phi or phi, however you want to pronounce it, is what I have termed it earlier, or described its function, was control, stabilization, what was the other one? Control, and direction. So where this 5 is, if you think about it, yeah, it looks like a cross, so yeah, it can very easily blend in to a traditional religious setting. right? You know, and for as far as esoteric people that that notice and are aware of this stuff, they say, "Oh, okay." Well, that longer vertical leg and where the number 5 is, well, that's a lot like either a pendulum, like a clock, but a pendulums also help maintain or regain stability in situations, right? Okay, you have that, and then you also have, well, gee, if you were in a boat, you know, older boats or whatever, they have that big rudder, and it kind of, sometimes it may hang out a little further than the back of the boat, so that gives you leverage, and you steer the boat with that rudder. 5, the integer 5, and between the integers 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the integers 6, 7, 8, and 9, well, the integer that's in the middle of that is the integer, the number 5. So I consider 5 a balanced. 5 is a balance, is a balanced number. And 9 is in this image, 9 is on the top. 9 is on the top because the transformation of value of 8 to 9, you can think of it spiritually, religiously, if you want, or whatever, like this. 8 is the abundance, God and His abundance that is provided to humanity. Okay? And that abundance has to do with the process yield, this quantum, with love, living on virtual energy, logically optimizing virtual environment, logically operating virtual energy. So with the number 9, that's at the top because that's the result of putting to the benefit of humanity, to humanity's self, to each individual, and to the glory of God, if you want to look at it like this, if you want to consider, if it helps you to consider it like this, and to the glory of God, then you have number 9, as a result of the process, whatever humanity has done, has achieved, how he's behaved, what he's done from the abundance provided to him by God. Okay, so 9 is the completion of that. And and every day, every waking cycle, humanity, each individual has, is the ever-present now, and it's a present. Every day you wake up and you have the awareness and the consciousness, then that is a present that God has given you. If you want to think of it this way. But you can also think of it, and if you're very logical and don't want to look at it spiritually like that, or you hadn't considered the scientific melding into the spiritual, the religious, and see how things get sidetracked and how attention is diverted from one priority to another, and how it just messes all this stuff up, and it causes this corruption. And I call it, I've defined this, the corruption, it's sin, okay? S-I-N. It's systemic or systematic or system intelligence nullification. You're dumbing down whatever's going on is dumbing down the system. The people are ignorant. And that's why all this chaos is going on. And there's people that like to take advantage. There's systems that have been built to take advantage of the chaos through ignorance. Ignorance that's something that these people are striving for, but they're what's coming out of the fruit that their trees are providing are they're telling a different story. So, it is what it is. So anyway, let's move on. So that's the Celtic cross. That's a quantum cross. And that's the fourth process so far that I've developed. Like I said, this is more recent that I've come across this and thought about it. But it fits in, I think, very well with the Delta Pi Psi Phi, and Phi being control, stabilization, direction, whatever. And this Delta Pi Psi Phi, and this quantum talk, that I'm in functions that I'm talking about, we're talking we're talking manifestation. And that's what that's what Jesus, in my opinion, what he was trying to get across to people was this manifestation, which again is quantum. And people, I understand that probably some people are thinking, well, English alphabet, 1 through 9, that hadn't always been 1 through 9, and it hadn't always been the English or Western iteration or what have you, representation, style, or whatever, of what the numbers or quantities represent in the alphabet, in different languages and what have you. And even now in Farsi, I don't know if they call them integers or whatever, but what we would call numbers, they look kind of, but they don't go together except for, I think maybe the integer 1. But see, they still use a dot rather than a 0 to represent, as a placeholder, see? And so they don't use zeros. So their integers they're using are 1 through 9. Okay? See, this is what I'm talking about. And I think this also ties into the story, or the whatever you want to call it, account or record or whatever, of the Tower of Babel, and how everybody was confused. Now, how that happened, I'm not sure, but the quantum functions, the language, can bring all of that back to humanity and a comprehension and a balance so that people can look at things from at least a more similar perspective, but not put that emotional, oh, your family disrespected my family or a relative, or, that stuff that has been going on for a long time. And and something else that has helped to cultivate that and propagate it and continue it, or people have made bank. In other words, they've developed industries and systems that where it's to it's to the benefit of these people in this way of doing business and such, to keep all this chaos going and the high entropy crap going and fear and everything else, all that negative shit. That's their business model. So, back to this, the acrolysh of love. All right, it's a quantum. I wanted it to be a communication bridge, or a bridge for communications, and not just human communications. I think that there's far more potential to it than that. So anyway, let's get going. I'm sorry to make you listen to this for so long, but I figured this was the best way for me to get the information, and I feel like I can speak pretty fluidly about this. I don't know what you want to call it, hypotheses, theory, concepts, or whatever. But here you go. Next slide. And then, okay, so this is an image. This is, if you look at it from the top down, it says trippy sci-fi. You have energy, which is the psi, Greek psi alphabet symbol. Below that, or just below that, you have the phi or phi, Greek phi alphabet symbol, which represents control, direction control. What did I say? Whatever I said it was earlier, the direction, the control, stabilization. Okay, and below that, you see there's a triangle, and that's the delta, Greek alphabet delta, and that represents time. And then below that, you see the delta is resting on the top of the Greek letter pi, P-I, and P-I represents space. And then below that is written, consciousness requires space. So yeah. Now if you were exploring out in somewhere and you saw this in a cave, and it looked like some ancient cave drawing or whatever, well, let's think about it. Well, the energy's coming in. It's an antenna of some sort. It's coming in into some type of something to direct the energy or control it or stabilize it. That creates or alters time, some temporal duration, alters some kind of temporal property. And then that gives that results in space. Okay? And within space, there will be, or at least there's a good foundation of whatever exactly it is that requires consciousness to spring forth. Okay. So that's what that is. Okay. And then the next slide is the same image, but it's flipped over 90 degrees. And you still, and you look at the different perspectives, and you see the energy. And it could be that space and time, okay, those two combined, there's a way to control or stabilize or disrupt or stabilize or, whatever, direct energy from time and space. See? But either way, whatever the process is, it's related to logically or living on virtual energy. What the fuck? What are you talking about? Well, we know that there's a yield process. So the transformation of value from 8 to 9. And why is it 8 to 9? Well, it's probably others as well, but since 8, see, that's the last in an 8-bit process, or the way computers work, modern computers work, and maybe 8-bit quantum computers, you have 8, and you get to that last bit, and whatever it is, that the result or process or whatever the next thing, whatever it is that happens after reading that last bit, well, within that duration, that temporal, it's like the waveform. Is it a waveform or is it a particle? Okay, and that's that quantum function, and that's what 9 represents. It's the abundance of God given to or whatever it may be given to, but given to humanity. And number 9 is the beginning, okay, is the next foundational process for the result, or is the result of God's presence of abundance he gives to humanity, of nature, of creator, of what source, okay, the abundance that is provided by source to humanity, okay. So that's what living on virtual energy, love, really is. Wow. Well, the word came about sometime in about 300 or so. Just same with the English language or whatever. Now, you might be able to go through different languages and number integers and, whatever. But this is what I've been concentrating on, is the English alphabet and the English or Western numbers, what have you. So we have that, living on virtual energy, logically operating virtual energy, logically optimizing virtual environment, and there's another one, I can't think of it right this second. But, and these are, love is an acronym that I've defined, and that's how I define them as. All this stuff, I've created or defined, I've got, there are 1,536 words like love and many other 1,536 words that I have defined as acronyms, okay, as a lexicon for the mission, the mission of what acrolish of love is all about, what I've intended for, what it should be doing, its mission statement, what have you. So that's just a little bit of that. And there are courses I'm coming up with and what have you. But this is to get people on the same page, not to change whatever. It's just like learning another language. Okay, I'm not asking you to stop speaking English and whatever. I'm just saying this is something you could learn, and if you pay the very reasonable price, I mean, the very reasonable price of attention, then you might learn something and about manifesting a better world for yourself and the people that you love and the things that you love. So anyway, next slide, and we'll go here. Oh my gosh. Oh, it gave me a heart attack. What in the world? You are the 17th. What? Dudes, man, I ain't watching no more of this crap. I ain't listening to this dude. No. Hold on a second. Calm down. Have you even looked at the picture? Do you know what the image is from? Correct. It is the apotheosis of George Washington in the United States Capitol Rotunda in Washington, D.C. You are the 17th. Well, why did I put that in there? Well, I don't know. I mean, look at it. Examine the picture there. Okay? And that's George Washington in the bottom in the center there. Okay, there's a reason for that. And I'm going to let you contemplate it, think about it, and see what you figure out and come across, and think about the entirety of it. Now, while we're contemplating all of this, oh, hello, baby Pepe. Oh, that's Trump's Pepe. Hey. All right. Well, so think about this. America, if you know any of the history, if you've gone back far enough, and if it interested you enough, and you were curious, you'd hear things like, first you had the Illuminati and all that kind of stuff, but I've heard a lot of things, but something that I admired, one of them that I had more respect, one of the stories or whatever accounts that I had more respect for and enjoy, is with Francis Bacon. And he had a lot of things to do with linguistics, supposedly he may have had something to do with William Shakespeare. He invented in his group, he had this group of writers or whatever, and they were inventing words and stuff like that, and he was all about this new land or new place called America. Or a place that would be eventually named America. I think they knew of the name America at the time. Or maybe it was Atlantis, or something like that, because they knew about Atlantis back then. You know, stories, legends, whatever. But so Francis Bacon was writing about that and writing about this new land and this, prosperous and what have you. And if you go back and, like I said earlier at the beginning of the slideshow, that William Henry did an awesome documentary on I thought it was anyway, awesome presentation on the apotheosis of George Washington. So all of these figures in the image, in the mural and all of that, there are stories and there are concepts and this is quantum communication. And if you're quantumly attuned to a lot of this stuff, and people will call it esoteric or occult or whatever. But yeah, that's just rude, crude, and social. Let me just use the term that occult crap. Well, it's not crap, but it's been utilized as being purposefully rude, crude, and socially unacceptable, without, and hiding desperately the other side of that, and all of it together is part of the entirety of the eternal and infinite whole, as in, everything, whole of existence. And that's what quantum is. See? And if the processes aren't corrupted and full of sin, systemic intelligence nullification, there is a quantum process yield for all of these things that go on, and the letters and the letters and the integers that are used can have a determination or an influence on the result perceived or the result intended. See? So all of this goes roundy to say that you watching this, listening to this video and audio, are the 17th. You are the quantum. Okay, that's where all this leads. You are the quantum. And back, it's been planned, basically, and like I was saying about Francis Bacon and all of that, and this new America, and the founding of America and what it represented, and these people that wanted to get away from Europe and the way that system was operating and what have you. But lo and behold, just like everything, corruption, was there in the beginning, and the foundation, during the foundation of the establishment of America. And so this stuff has been going on and on and on ever since. But, however, now we have a better quantum understanding, a better quantum comprehension, a comprehension of the quantum processes and how it works, and that there is a process yield, so these people can't keep ripping us off because they're making money, creating money and making money out of thin air. Yeah, but that's counterfeit. That's not out of free air or thin air. It's off the sweat, blood, tears, suffering, and illnesses that they've created through that system, through their lack of comprehension, whether it be willfully or not. And see, the quantum system corrects what has been happening, and how what has been happening, how it has been able to continue for a very long time. And it's due, if the foundation was corrupt from sin of an earlier, a previous, a long time ago, well, that foundation is all eat up, and we see the results of it now, or globally or worldwide, that the system it's not up to par. It can't handle, it wasn't built for, because nobody ever took the time, rather than take the time to untangle the Gordian knot, they just cleaved it in two. And with cleaving it in two, there were connections, there were nerves, there were ganglia of nerves that were separated permanently. And all of that was the reason to process the Gordian knot slowly and determinately, and undo it, and not cut the rope, the twine, whatever it was that made up the material that made up the Gordian knot, so that you could take it out and the result would be a whole. You could see everything, and it was still connected and organized, and it could be read. But some guy gets impatient and says, "Hey, yeah, screw this shit. All that crap doesn't mean anything," and he frickin' cleaves the knot. And yeah, he kind of did, but it was a shortcut. And through that shortcut, they missed all the other scenery that could have led them to different answers and different situations, and they would have been much better off than claiming that might was right and that time was money. Am I right? Is that correct? Yeah. Well, you might think it is, you might think it's not. I don't know. Doesn't matter. So anyway, this has been my talk on the quantum natural language programming, the Acrolish of Love system and projects and its mission statement, what quantum is, how it works, or what this aspect of it how it works, what it is, how it can be used beneficially. Get some ideas on it. Think a little bit about it. Listen to if you can bear it. Listen again if you didn't quite grasp the concepts of what I'm speaking about. But I'm trying to explain it in a way, and this is shifting paradigms. So your paradigms are basically how and what you think about situations. Like, if you've got some kind of whatever the situation, and it's a issue or a problem that you need to solve or remedy. What's your process for solving or remedying that particular situation or issue or whatever it is, challenge, whatever. And so the way you think about that and the way that you go about, solving it or whatever, reaching the result that you would like to see, sometimes we'll find out if you do if you're somewhat, it takes practice and it takes time, but if you have the gumption to do it and the determination, you'll begin to pick up on stuff. Listen to your body, how your environment, be aware of this stuff, and you'll become, all you have to do is pay attention. Just remind yourself to pay attention every now. Work on your breathing, work on your diet, yada, yada, yada. We know all this. But we're also talking about and this is going to help your physical health as well, but being more aware and understanding what's going on around you and the energies and how these energies are being used by or the results of how these energies are being used. And it's not so much, people want you to think it's evil, but everybody has the ability to affect, change their environment. And that being the case, and we are existing and there is a collective consciousness. We're all kind of somehow, some way, whether people want to admit it or not, but there is a connection with other people. We have this, and some it's stronger, and some people sense it more easily than others. But that's the collective. So whatever you're doing, there's probability, possibility, whatever, that it won't work out exactly like what you intend or as fast or in the way that you see it. That's because there's a lot of unknowns, by yourself, known to yourself, unknowns to yourself, so you might try to manifest something or want, get something to happen. You come up with a plan or whatever and you can do it and it doesn't work out. Well, somebody else did somewhere, that's not even nearly related, did something, and that's why the energy, this process yield wasn't strong enough to overcome that interference that it met, and it wasn't like it was directed at that the person knew. Sometimes, this is how the people nefariously do it, but the energy someone else put out doing something else could have caused something that, deflected your energy that you initialized with your process yield, your quantum You're quantum. You're the 17th. So you see, we need to learn how to operate quantum, learn to understand quantum. And this is what Jesus was trying to tell people. You go to the Gospels of Thomas, read that. Read Cliff High's write-up on that, about manifestation. All right. First becomes last, 8 to 9. Then you start 8 again. It's the first bit of the next bite. The process. Ba ba da ba da ba da ba da. You're gaining a process yield with each process of each bit. So at the end of the process of the bite, number 9, which is the abundance provided by God to humanity, it's the result of that. See? That's quantum. That's love. That's what love is. That's how it operates. Or should. And it's kind of the foundational, these are foundational cornerstones, if you will. Or one big, giant cornerstone with all of these functions, these concepts included in it. So anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed it. I'm going to get this processed and loaded up and all that stuff. And I hope you enjoyed the last 2 slides, which was Pepe and Trump. Hey, Pepe! Q! And I hope you're not mad. Y'all take care. Be safe. Much love.